Welcome to Alumio ReConnect, the show that guides digital business leaders through the fast-changing and exciting era of digital transformation. I'm Caspar, CEO at Alumio, and today we're talking about how system integrators and agencies can overcome e-commerce diversity with industry expert Travis Eiland. If you have any questions, please drop us a line in the comment section below, and we'll make sure to answer them. But before I introduce our guest, I'd like to briefly tell you about Alumio. We enable companies to accelerate digital transformation. With Alumio, you integrate software and automate business processes properly, which are key for you to succeed in the digital jungle. We have an intuitive integration platform, also known as an iPaaS. With our solution, your integrations no longer need to be programmed or managed by developers. Utilizing Alumio means to accelerate and obtain flexibility, ownership, and control on your integrations. So, now it's time to welcome Travis to Alumio ReConnect. Travis has spent over 12 years in the digital commerce ecosystem, with an impressive track record at companies like Vtex, eBay, Adobe, and Amaze. I'm super excited that he's sharing his thoughts and experiences today. Hi, Travis. Thanks for joining us.
It has been
hey man. It has been a while since we last met. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on the show. It's great to reconnect.
It's great to reconnect indeed. It's maybe before we continue, you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. What's keeping you busy lately, and go ahead.
Yeah, sure. No, it's been I guess 5 years since we last talked. It's pre-COVID. I think that was IRC in Chicago maybe, but I've been busy since. It's I love e-commerce and all the technology innovations that are in the space. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I've been here for 19 years. So, previous, you mentioned Magento. So I was very fortunate to have a run with Magento when it was eBay. I helped build the Magento cloud when we divested. And then after that, I ran our technology partnership, business development programs, bundling integrations into the software. And then most recently, I've come over to Amaze. So Amaze is a no-code design engine that allows customers or merchants to communicate with immersive customer experience in minutes. So, what we've seen is that be able to design content at scale for different segments of your audience across channels is very challenging for merchants. And we simplify that, allowing merchants to design those experiences and making those experiences shoppable.
That's a really good intro and a really good pitch. Super excited again to have you here. And indeed, it has been 5 years. And it feels like it has just like it was a year ago. But actually, a lot of things have happened, that has changed over the last 5 years. So maybe it's good to start with a little recap. Where are we? Well, where were we 5 years ago, and what actually happened? Because there are so many changes regarding technology, regarding platforms, regarding customer demand, how the market is evolving. What are your maybe the most significant things that have changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I think about the last couple of years, it's almost impossible not to think about the last decade. And if we think about the large implementations and the monolithic platforms that existed really only for the top end of the market, this technology is becoming more and more democratized. In the 2000s, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to build on a SaaS platform and be able to get your company to market. And commerce is very difficult. And so as we've seen this technology improve and the innovation in the space continue to grow, what I believe is that we've seen a democratization with the ability to adapt and to demands quickly. And these market changes that customers are facing, they're able to achieve them at a much faster pace. And so when we think about the architectures that exist today and this headless environment, which maybe we can break that down a little bit, what headless is. It's a means to the end. It's what cloud was back in the 2000s, right? And so
Correct.
It's how people are building their experiences and decoupling very specific environments within other environments.
Yeah. Al, actually, it's quite funny because looking back, of course, we had the main e-com platforms, and at one point, and I mean the last decade, right, the last 10 years, and at one point, more and more best-of-breed software was popping up. So the agencies, they were pitching best-of-breed software, like everybody was talking about best-of-breed software. And then that seems to have been chunked into smaller pieces, which we now know as composable, ecom, or headless. And I've been struggling with the term headless for quite a while. I thought it was another buzzword, but the funny thing is, and we definitely should go deep into that topic a bit further. But I can imagine that with all of these like branching out into smaller pieces, into so many new e-com software solutions, best-of-breed software, I can imagine it's extremely difficult for merchants to keep up and to make the right decisions. And I can also imagine that really impacts SIs and agencies, because they need to answer the question from the market, right? What are your thoughts about that?
That's a good question. I think it's imperative that we recognize that we're not all building on the same code base.
True.
I've been fortunate to see across the e-commerce landscape building the technology ecosystem at Magento and Adobe, in that you have content and commerce and payments and back-end infrastructure design and fulfillment and shipping, and you need to put all of these into one experience. And so I know a lot of people are coding with GraphQL and such now, and that makes it a lot easier to design these experiences. But agencies in technology, ISVs, are really struggling to figure out who to integrate with, who pays for that integration, how do you build it, who maintains it afterwards, and is there an appropriate market for that need right then and there? So do you build, do you buy? And so one of the things that I've seen rise, especially with Alumio, is this idea of this middleware is establishing some framework to build and scale your own business. And unfortunately, if you're not able to offer these technology solutions to your merchants and they're asking for them, you're at a disadvantage. And so, this could reduce, if you look at the cost implications of that for the merchant, and merchant margins are thin in retail and different verticals, right?
Yeah.
So there's a compression that happens when you go to, let's say, Supermock, right? You have all these APIs, all these integrations, all these different platforms. And I don't believe retailers can really spend more than 5% of their gross profits on all this technology. Mm-hmm. And then the pressure that puts on the agency is coupled with the fact that they have to figure out how to make it all work together. That's the expectation. And so when you think about the margins and the billable hours and the workloads and the changes that you have to make on behalf of a merchant introducing a new technology, I feel like a lot of the SIs have told me that they've established really granular relationships with platforms of their choice. Maybe they're best of breed platforms, but there's always something new coming to market. There's always a new carrot for merchants to try to recognize and want to implement.
Yeah. So well, I think back in the days, I'm starting to feel a bit old. Actually, together I think we're putting like 40 years of experience in this in this session. That also tells us a little bit about our age. Nevertheless, I think it does. It's interesting because I have a background as an agency, and I know the experience from firsthand that it's really difficult to utilize a new platform. And so relying on one platform, maybe add another one, or maybe add something that complements another platform, it's already quite a challenge to properly implement that, educate people, and then being able to answer to market demands. But it seems to be accelerating even further. Like there's so many, like you can choose 5 decent product information management systems. You can choose 10 e-com platforms. You can choose. So there are so many options to choose from, and I can imagine that it's like a really big challenge for SIs and agencies to change their mindset from being a platform-oriented company, because many of them were platform-oriented, to more consulting, solution offering, kind of way of working with their clients. Because to me, like if I look at 5 or 10 years ago, the agencies were advocating the platform, and nowadays the merchants, the retailers, the B2B wholesalers, the manufacturers, they are telling the SIs, this is what we want. So I think that's something to take into consideration, and also how can you focus, I think, your competences and your capabilities towards more the actual technology than the platforms. So that's something that I also see, and where more and more things are shifting from like real developing things to implementing solutions, configuring it, but guiding the clients to make the right decisions. So really, like architectural consulting work, business solution specialists. So I think that's going to be way more important in the near future than actual developers. Maybe it's a bit bold to say, but
it could be. I mean, there's certainly a lot of the CMO side of the house where traditionally marketing had relied on technology so heavily. They've educated themselves to an extent where they really understand the market, and the content is out there. And so the way that software companies sell is changing. I believe that very deeply. And if you think about what an agency offers to one of these merchants or their client base, it's very difficult to assume that and be in a position where you don't know these technologies, because they've already been researched. So if you come to the table with lack of knowledge, then you lose posture with that client, right? And I do like what you said about practice areas, because there's so many technologies out there and so many different use cases. I saw this a while back, and a lot of the large consultancies had done this. I was working a relationship between Adobe and Hootsuite at the time, and I had talked to Digital Evolution Group, who'd got acquired by Isobar. I think they actually merged with another company thereafter. But one of the things that was interesting is that they had a whole practice area just for social media. And social doesn't always sit within the e-commerce side of the house. There's always been this like love-hate relationship with being able to promote content on social, which is something that we're trying to solve for. But the practice area is very important, and there's an opportunity. If you're not coming to the table knowledgeable in these different practice areas, somebody else is going to. The technology is becoming democratized. There's social media managers able to publish content without the help of a developer and actually make that content shoppable. And so when we think about what agencies can bring in these, they can book hours, they can develop content, develop programs, and build practice areas around being able to coach those or supplement the merchants' time and resources. Because like we were talking about before, there's so many different areas in a e-commerce business to manage, from product development. I recently got a chance to talk to somebody in the beauty industry at Pacifica Beauty, and the conversation was clearly way over my head. I understand commerce really well, but I don't really understand product development, what that takes in the beauty industry to get things approved, get the right smells, the textures, all of those things. Like that's what our retail partners are dealing with. And so if we can come to the table with solutions that provide some sort of economies of scale to allow them to scale their business, monetize better, get better returns, and do all of that a lot quicker, that's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think that, if you look at Alumio, where we first started integrating e-com with ERP systems, and then, PIM was becoming more relevant than CRM. And then at one point, our users, they actually started to automate their internal business processes with Alumio. So, connecting directly with their preferred suppliers, their trading partners, and basically anything that was repetitive, which they actually can automate. We see a large increase of users moving to that part of the business. And I think that's where the large opportunity actually lies for agencies, system integrators, to support their clients, not only on the front end, but moving like more and more into the core business, help them to optimize and make things more efficiently. And in regards to that, so if you look at, because we briefly touched headless e-com and composable commerce. To be honest, at first they were buzzwords. Actually, I'm trying to be as innovative as possible, but I'm also trying to see how the market is evolving. So I like to read a lot, like to educate myself, but not like embrace a new term too quickly. But headless and composable e-com is actually, it has become a really, really large, a big deal. And also regarding the MAG Alliance. And the funny thing is, my product team told me like 24 months ago that our user experience, our interface is actually headless. Practice what you preach, right? But how do you think that SIs and agencies can become multi-purpose and adopt new technologies that are that relate to those composable headless topics?
Right. I've seen agencies already start to go down this path, and if they're not already, they should severely consider, because this is like you said before, the clients are demanding it, right? And so, I think picking out your favorites is great and standardizing, but you're always going to have some variability in your clients' needs and what use cases those ISVs can support. And so building one framework to connect multiple things into, and then also not having to re-engineer those things when another technology is added, is super important. And the MAG Alliance I was a part of through VTEX, and it was revealing, because there was such a culture created amongst those different platforms of having some sort of interoperability. That's the point, right? Is having interoperability and microservices, API first. It reduces the time to market significantly. And so, if there's old platforms that aren't using these things, like these new platforms are going to rise and take market share. And those are the ones that agencies should be considering.
Yes, I fully agree. And not only that, I think what I still see a lot in the market is that merchants and agencies, by the way, they're creating a status quo. So there's this new project, a new ambition, a new goal. And like the project has been scoped, and there's going to be like this major launch of the new website, integrated PIM, everything around it. But the thing is, I think us all, we should be way more focused on, okay, what comes next? What's going to happen in 12 months? What's going to happen in 24, 48 months? And I think that I truly believe that headless commerce and using composable e-commerce really helps creating this layer of flexibility, allowing companies to utilize software, use it for the purpose that they want to, whether it's like content publishing or integrations or like conversational commerce, whatever. It will help them to quickly adapt over time. I'm not sure if you understand I think that, well, first of all, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you have a framework and you're snapping new puzzle pieces in.
That's it. Yeah. Well, we all make it. Well, we make it sound so very easy, right?
Those are simple analogies, right?
Yeah. Well, we like to make. We like to keep things business wise and keep it as simple as possible. But indeed, that's basically what we should try to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, I've been on the business side for long enough to say and spit vision, and then have my technology counterparts kind of look at me cross-eyed, like, what are you promising exactly?
Well, it's not. I don't think it's about promising. I think it's about trying to get the word to the right audience in a simplified way, and that's actually what Mark has been doing very well. They actually businessized. I don't know if that's even a word, but businessized the underlying motivation to use composable, to use headless, and to be flexible for the future, using microservices or any kind of technology.
So the way that I'd think about what's coming and how to prepare for it, we had talked about different practice areas, and because tech architectures are becoming more API friendly, agencies are already adopting best practice implementations. And so when we think about like what is the market pivoting to, and what can we be thought leaders of now as we establish those underlying architectures, there's a couple things that I think are very relevant that are coming, and there's some countries ahead of others. Like for instance, conversational commerce in shoppable video. So from an agency practice area, there are different things that their brands are wanting to do to drive engagement, to drive loyalty. And China and Brazil have been, I think, ahead on the conversational side, and I think that we may leapfrog potentially the on the shoppable video side. But also mobile is huge. It still is huge. I've been talking about it for years, since Retail Me Not, where we were driving store traffic with a mobile device and coupons at checkout, right? But it's still relevant. I think that over 80% of people now shop exclusively on their phones, and that may be like a millennial generation Y X thing maybe. And so being able to think about the ways that we democratize these experiences and make those experiences shoppable in these channels, I think is coming. And so technology is enabling those things to happen, and decoupling payments architecture, building immersive design experiences.
Yep.
And that's where I think agencies, we've seen, and you've even been a part of this with Media CT, right? With the acquisition. But if we go back and we look right around the time Magento was being acquired, I know Blue Acorn was acquired by ICI, Valtech, Born Group were also building these types of strategies. I mentioned Isobar, Gorilla was purchased by Wonderman, and last year W Promote had an acquisition as well. So Visager. And so when we think about this conglomeration of SI and technology implementations, as well as the front end, I've seen that coming for years, but like, what do they need to be thinking about on the agency side, like being able to create content at scale and respond to audience demands? Some of the most exciting features I think that have come out have been around like the ability to have a real-time customer engagement platform. We've been talking about CDP for a while, but how do you actually action off of these interactions that are happening? Being able to track all of that and create relevant experiences in the moment for your customers. I mean, people want to buy from people, right? And so, another thing that we've seen is this this shift. I mean, if we look at what Instagram did last year, they did over $47 billion in 21. And
that's
so
crazy, right?
What I've seen is creators aren't able to actually share in these profits. And so what we've heard on our side in the creative space is that brands are wanting to engage creators, and creators want more access to brands. And so we've seen the top end of this market. Again, it always kind of starts with the top, with like celebrity brands like Honest Company or Textile, who owns Fabletics and some other brands. But the commerce experience is becoming democratized and headless. Those experiences can exist anywhere and be promoted anywhere. And so that's a really exciting vector that Amaze sits in, that has got me up at night thinking about how the world's changing and how we can adapt and enable customers, our merchant partners and agencies, to adapt to that.
Yeah, well, you're touching a couple of interesting topics. First of all, like how the market of SIs and agencies is changing rapidly by a lot of companies getting acquired. And if you only look at Europe, there were there's so many agencies out there, so many system integrators, and there has been like this wave of acquisitions. And to be honest, I was expecting this. I already foresaw it, but I did not expect it to go that fast. It was like, I think, well, COVID started, and I was like, wow, what's going on? And we suddenly had this 500 employees companies, 1,000 employee companies, only doing digital commerce. And so that has been very exciting. And I also foresee that this will, actually, it's like grow or die, right? That's basically, or specialize. That's the thing, that you have this niche market where you really excel in, and just simply you hire the clients and they do not hire you. But I think that's really exciting to see, and I'm really curious to see how these companies will keep their agility and their ways to rapidly change toward new market demands. Because before you know it, we get these traditional accountancy companies that are now moving into the digital commerce domain, of course, not being able to reply quickly on new things that are happening. And I think this, I thought that last decade was complex. Looking back, that was actually a fairly easy decade if you look at the number of technologies and platforms that we had. And so, and thinking about the second thing that you mentioned about conversational commerce, the diversity, the checkout everywhere concept. This is what I'm seeing at the moment, that companies are, they're using an e-com platform. They're removing the checkout and they're using like a centralized checkout for different purposes. And so also for system integrators and agencies, I think they will be like, as soon as they start embracing these serviced components that they can utilize for their clients in many ways, that's where they will enter the new way of working for clients, and for them to answer to Insta commerce or WhatsApp commerce or any kind of way to sell. Because I expect that if we speak again in 2 to 3 years, that we'll have another number of new ways to sell things online. And that's the exciting part of this decade, that the complexity has grew, the diversity has grew, and it's going to be very exciting. And but it's so cool to see companies like Amaze popping up, like Alumio answering these specific areas and just simplifying and standardizing super cool things. Well, Travis, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah, man. I hope to meet you again soon. Hopefully somewhere maybe in Chicago or Vegas. Well, to the audience, thanks for listening to Alumio ReConnect. Did you like our show? Share some love and give us a thumbs up. And feel free to ask any questions in the comment section below. See you next time. Alumio, making integration simple.